Hey everybody, welcome back. It's time for another children's sermon, don't you think? This week we're reading The Servant King from, of course, the Jesus Storybook Bible. This story is about Jesus' last week before he's crucified. And so there's some pretty cool things that happen during that week. But I chose it, not because it's Holy Week, that's usually when we'd read this story. But I wanted to read it this week because it's Labor Day weekend. And so Labor Day is a day when businesses are closed and people usually have time off from work, and we celebrate the work that people do. We're just taking time to rest and to celebrate those who labor in our world. And so this story is called The Servant King, and there's some really good parts in here about how Jesus shows us his love through his actions. And I think about all those people who are working in the world and how they show love through their actions and their work. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm going to let you listen to the story now, and then we'll come back. I've got a few things to show you, and we'll talk a little bit more. See you in a second. The Servant King. It was Passover, the time when God's people remembered how God had rescued them from being slaves in Egypt. Every year, they killed a lamb and ate it. The lamb died instead of us, they would say. But this Passover, God was getting ready for an even greater rescue. Jesus and his friends were having the Passover meal together in an upstairs room. But Jesus' friends were arguing. What about? They were arguing about stinky feet. Stinky feet? Yeah, that's right. Stinky feet. Now, the thing about feet back then was that people didn't wear shoes. They only wore sandals, which might not sound unusual, except that the streets in those days were dirty. And I don't mean just dusty dirty. I mean really stinky dirty. With all those cows and horses everywhere, you can imagine the stuff on the street that ended up on their feet. So, anyway, someone had to wash away the dirt. But it was a dreadful job. Who on earth would ever dream of volunteering to do it? Only the lowliest servant. I'm not the servant, Peter said. Nor am I, said Matthew. Quietly, Jesus got up from the table, took off his robe, picked up a basin of water, knelt down, and started to wash his friend's feet. You can't, Peter said. He didn't understand about Jesus being the servant king. If you don't let me wash away the dirt, Peter, Jesus said, you can't be close to me. Jesus knew that what people needed most was to be clean on the inside. All the dirt on their feet was nothing compared to the sin inside their hearts. Then wash me, Lord, Peter said, tears filling his eyes, all of me. One by one, Jesus washed everyone's feet. I'm doing this because I love you, Jesus explained. Do this for each other. Now, one of Jesus' friends had made a bad plan. No one else knew what the bad plan was, but Jesus knew, and so did Judas. Judas was going to help the leaders capture Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. Go on, Judas, Jesus said. And Judas got up from the meal and left the room and walked out into the night. Then Jesus picked up some bread and broke it. He gave it to his friends. He picked up a cup of wine and thanked God for it. He poured it out and shared it. My body is like this bread. It will break, Jesus told them. This cup of wine is like my blood. It will pour out. But this is how God will rescue the whole world. My life will break and God's broken world will mend. My heart will tear apart and your hearts will heal. Just as the Passover lamb died, so now I will die instead of you. My blood will wash away all of your sins, and you'll be clean on the inside, in your hearts. So whenever you eat and drink, remember, Jesus said, I've rescued you. Jesus knew it was nearly time for him to leave the world and go back to God. I won't be with you long, he said. You are going to be very sad. But God's helper will come, and then you'll be filled with a forever happiness that won't ever leave. So don't be afraid. You are my friends, and I love you. Then they sang their favorite song, and walked up to their favorite place, an Olive Garden. That's about all the sign language that I know. But what I love about sign language is that it shows you what a person's trying to communicate. It's a very expressive way of communicating, and obviously it's really helpful for those who are part of the deaf community, for them to be able to see what a person is trying to communicate. That's where sign language is often used. But I love it anyways. I've got one more sign for you. How about this one? Do you know this one? I love you. This is a great way to show love to people or to let them know that you love them. Also, sometimes at church, don't we do peace, right? The peace be with you. So what I'm thinking about this week as I read this story of the servant king is all the ways that Jesus shows us that he loves us and the ways he showed his disciples and the rest of the world. At the end of that story, right, he took bread and wine and he said, "Do this in remembrance of me. This is my body, this is my blood, it's given for you." And so Jesus gave us a meal to show us his love, and then he gave his life to show us his love. They always say that it's often better to show than to tell. You can tell someone you love them, but how are you going to show it? So this is all of what I'm thinking about this week as we get set for Labor Day. All the ways that people show love for others or love for their family by going to work every day and working hard, by caring for their coworkers or their fellow employees, by taking care of their friends. You get the idea. So your homework for this week, right? Because we always want to be putting our faith into practice. So your practice this week is to show someone in your family that you love them. Don't just tell them. Do something special for them to show them that you love them. I'm Pastor Nate. This has been the Children's Sermon for this week. Take care, everybody. Have a good week. Bye-bye.